Hey Wire Monkeys, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Cabling. Today, we're diving into a topic that doesn't always get the spotlight that it deserves, but it can make or break a project. We're talking about the power of specifications and the roles of specification engineers.
Welcome to Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low voltage industry connects. Hosted by Chuck Bowser, RCDD, we're here to empower installers, designers, and industry pros with the tips, stories, and best practices you need to stay ahead. From copper to fiber, standards to innovation, this is the show that keeps you plugged into success. So grab your tools, turn up the volume, and let's talk cabling.
Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, technicians, project managers, estimators, customers, IT personnel. We are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new content is being produced? If you're listening to us on one of the audio podcast platforms, would you mind giving us a 5-star rating? And if the show's not a 5-star rating, then shoot me an email and let me know what I can do to make this a 5-star rated show. Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know that I do a live stream on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and a couple other places I just can't think of the names of off the top of my head, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD, and you know that's me. Don't even try to pretend like I'm not. Your questions on installation, certification, design, project management. Did I say estimation? I'll say it again just in case. And even career path questions. But I can hear you now. Chuck, I'm driving my truck at 6 p.m. on Wednesday nights. I don't want to get into an accident. Relax. I record them. And you can watch them at your convenience if you go to the website, letstalkcabling.com. And also, while this show is free and will always remain free, if you find value in this content, would you click on that QR button right there? You can buy me a cup of coffee. You can even schedule a 15-minute one-on-one call with me, after hours, of course, where we get to answer all those questions. I know some of you might be thinking, specifications, blah, how exciting can that really be? Let's be honest. But let me tell you, the knowledge and insights that these experts can bring can transform your project from not just a good project, but to an exceptional project. I want you to imagine this. You're in the middle of a massive install, and a spec detail catches your eye. Now, it could save your project time, it could cut costs, it might even prevent a major snag. But who's the wizard behind the curtain ensuring that every spec is not only rock solid, but also aligned with the latest tech and the latest standards? That's right, it's your specifications engineer. And today we're talking to one of the best in the field. Today our guest is going to take us behind the scenes into the world of showing us of how spec engineers support from every project manager to even technicians, help them navigate that sea of options, finding the most reliable, the most cost-effective solutions. We'll discuss how manufacturers' resources can be leveraged for better project designs. Who doesn't want a better design? Why estimation accuracy is not an accident. It's done through due diligence. And how to keep up the ever-evolving standards in connectivity and cabling. So stick around, because if you're a project manager, you might be looking to sharpen your edge. As an estimator, you might be wanting to boost your accuracy. Or if a technician, you might be facing those unpredicted on-site challenges. And for this episode today is going to have a little bit of something for everything. So welcome to the show, Mr. Roy Chamberlain. How you doing, my friend?
Very good. Very good. Thank you for having me, Chuck.
My pleasure. So why don't you, since it's your first time on the show, why don't you give us the 30-second view? Who is Roy, and why should the audience listen to you?
Yeah, well, I'm a specification engineer for Leviton Network Solutions. I live in New Hampshire. I've grew up in the industry in this area, in the Boston region. And I had a contractor background for about 20 years before coming to Leviton. And I spend my time supporting and educating architects, engineers, end users, and supporting the local reps, and just contributing all around.
My first question was to ask you was give us an overall overall idea of what a spec engineer does, and you did a little bit there, but let's talk a bit about how do you benefit project managers, and how does a spec engineer benefit estimators?
So it really depends. So, like I mentioned, I do a lot on the design and pre-design aspect, but I do get pulled in for estimation, and I do have contractors at times that will contact me and support there. And basically, what I do is I take the information that we're downloaded here at Leviton, from a broad base of professionals and experts from all kinds of organizations, and we study and understand those specifics and the products, and we take solutions, right? We kind of try to base everything off of solutions, and we can provide all kinds of support, including for estimation and design is cost-effective options, filling in the blanks on designs that might be incomplete, and providing feedback on designs and specifications to be able to interpret exactly what the client might be looking for.
So as a spec engineer, you might be talking to an end user, maybe an architect, maybe a contractor, all within the same day then.
Yes, that's actually usually what happens. There's very rarely a day that I don't speak with an engineer, a rep, or a distribution or contractor. And in order for us to get on to the specifications, the other half of my job is to work on those entities that actually put together those those specifications and designs.
This wasn't one of the questions I submitted to you, but I'm pretty sure you could probably answer pretty easily. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from estimators to technicians is, and you can tell me how many you might be able to help resolve this issue with the influence that you have. But one of the biggest complaints that I hear quite often is when they get the scope of work or the request for proposal, the RFP, how it's always wrong. And when I say wrong, I mean like they list standards that are like 3 or 4 cycles old because somebody used copy and paste, or it's wrong in it might meet codes, but it doesn't meet standards. So how can a spec engineer help a person like a project manager or a technician solve those kinds of issues?
Yeah. Well, we do that all the time, and I guess it's we try to accomplish this from 2 points of view, right? First of all, I do everything, and my reps do everything we can to encourage engineers and consultants and end users to, allow me and, the spec engineers to be able to take a look at their specifications, right? And to write them, right? To bring them up to date, to make sure they have the latest and greatest standards, and to critique them, to give them feedback on the methods and standards that they have implemented. Because just like you said, I would say a good portion of specifications that are out there, and it's difficult for the engineers and consultants. They have a template, and they're trying to dish out all these different details, and a lot of times things get left over, right? Yep. Things get left over from past, and things in the templates may not get updated. So I do my best from that side to be able to have more cohesive and up-to-date specifications in the marketplace. But beyond that, distributors and contractors and other types of integrators, they'll contact us, and I will help them to interpret, the designs that they've put together based on, right, and based on the drawings and the details that they have. I'll help them to interpret, to allow them to have either a full system to add the pieces or change the pieces that don't fit together, and to fill in the blanks. So, when you read a specification, you kind of have to do that, right? You have to read between the lines, right, to try to understand exactly what the client is looking for as the end solution. So we do a lot of work. There's so many, it's such a broad spectrum. But in a nutshell, that's how it works.
Let's take a short break. Are you looking to grow your low voltage business? At Bowman Vision Media, we don't just market to the low voltage industry. We come from it. With decades of experience, we uniquely understand your business and how to help it grow. From social media to content creation, we deliver marketing that works as hard as you do. And while you're leveling up, check out the 49 Volts podcast, your go-to source for industry insights and expert interviews. Visit bowmanvisionmedia.com to learn more and subscribe to the 49 Volts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen.
I get why using templates is so attractive, because we're getting asked to do more and more in less and less time. And when I used to be an estimator for a large contractor, I used templates all the time. But it was a boilerplate. It was a boilerplate, and we always updated the code and standards on that. And then it was up to us to go through and make sure that we deleted out the section that didn't apply, changed the section that did apply. But that puts the onus on making sure that I hate to say this, proofread it. Proofread it before you send it. Because nothing will destroy a technician's or project manager's feeling in the field that this is a good design if you're referencing a code that's 3 cycles old. It's not even applied in that state anymore, or a standard that's it's the A version of the standard, but we're now up to like the E version of the standard. That doesn't just harbor feeling of, oh, this is a great design if they're referencing all this old stuff, right? So yeah, if you're using boilerplates, I get it, absolutely. Just proofread it, or ask a spec engineer like Roy here to just make sure it's late. And it's hard to do because they're always changing around. So the manufacturers, all the big manufacturers, they have resources to help improve projects and designs and stuff like that, to make sure that whoever, the estimator, the project manager, selects the most cost effective or most reliable solution. What are some of those resources that contractors, or remember, these might be contractors who might be from a real small company to a large company. What are some of the resources that are available out there that they can use to make their jobs better?
Right. Well, from a spec engineer standpoint, or one of the things that we have that helps the most. So, you mentioned kind of those large boilerplates, right? That were multiple pages long, and they have 100 options, and you're constantly deleting, right? And then and when you proofread the same thing, before every project, before it goes out, it can all blur a little bit, right? So I think that's a tall order, right? So it kind of creates a situation where mistakes can kind of show up pretty easily. So one of the resources we have, and I'm sure other manufacturers and other entities in the industry have, are solutions. So one of the things that we've done, so I was on the spec writing team, and I was responsible for the US based solutions, right? So we had one engineer who was doing the product specs, and another engineer that was focusing on international, and I was doing the solution. So I'd take those product specs and create the full solutions, right? And one of the things that we did that we've changed differently over the years is getting very specific as much as possible with each specification. So instead of having one big boilerplate, now we're basing on solutions. So what technology are you trying to, what throughput do you need? What technologies, what applications are going to be run over your network, right? And so we have a category 6, let's say a standard. We'll have an enhanced category 6A standard that will focus on high technology, high POE, things like that. And in the end, so not only do we have those templates that we try to share and allow engineers, to kind of cannibalize that or to use them themselves, but we also have these solution briefs and solution sheets. So one of the things Leviton has done, within the last couple of years is we've created some global systems. called Millennium, and they're systems that are from top to bottom, cable, jacks, panels, all the different entities that go within that system, and they're global. So let's say you're in touch with a global client, that's a good piece that can be used. But we also just for the fact of having all the details in there, so oh, hey, this part goes with this part in order to accomplish this throughput, this level of POE, all those types of things. And the same thing on the fiber side, and same thing on there. So we really try to start with to gain, or if an end user or a project manager has the information as far as what they're trying to accomplish, as far as the types of devices and applications, we have solutions for all those things. But I really like the solution sheets that we create and the documents that we have for there. We have it for a whole array of our different types of products, and that's a great resource to make sure that you have all the little pieces that are included in there.
And see, there's a portion of my audience, because I reach a lot of people. There's a portion of my audience that, they're small companies. They were techs in the field, and they decided they want to hang their shingle out there, and they want to be their own company. And kudos to them. I never try to do that, but the thing is they get their supplies and their materials from like Amazon. Mm-hmm. And my point is, if you stick with one of the big manufacturers, they have all the support structure out there for you. So like Spec Engineers and stuff like that. And because if you call up Amazon and say, hey, can you help me design a data center? You know what you're going to get? Nothing. There's going to be silence, right? So Are all of the Spec Engineers, are they all, are they like doctors? Do they have specialties, or all the Spec Engineers kind of like a generalist, and then there's maybe like a specialist that you might go to for maybe like data center stuff?
So a little of both, right? In order to be a spec engineer, you have to be well-rounded and well-qualified in most of the different types of solutions in verticals, right? Spaces that are going to need that infrastructure. And all our spec engineers, we have to understand that to a point. But there's, one of the things, on top of speaking to engineers and reps and contractors on a daily basis, I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't talk to, one of our product managers or one of our applications engineers or one of my fellow spec engineers. And I know who to call for whichever specialty it is. So yes, like you said, there could be, so for data centers, there's certain aspects of data centers that I understand very well. I spent thousands of hours in data centers. Certain aspects I have a really good feel for, but then there's other technologies or newer technologies. We're up here in the Northeast. Up in the Northeast, we're not building, there's not a lot of space, right? That get, electricity is expensive and things like that. You get a lot of those bigger data centers, let's say in the Southwest, Northwest, in that area. So, I might contact one of them for specific aspects if I see some similarity. And just like you said, we have our applications engineering department. Our customers and reps, basically can use that through customer service. But we use that as well. And there are specific engineers, right, professionals and experts that accommodate all those different entities, whether it be an extended distance requirement, whether it be residential, right, or data center, or any other type of specific area.
Do manufacturers charge for this added value?
No, so we do not do the work of, let's say, an engineer or a consultant. We're really supplemental. In general, we think of our specification engineering team as kind of the glue that kind of brings everything together, right? Everybody does their own little piece, right? The product managers, the application engineers, the contractor, the consultant, spec engineers, we fill all those gaps because we understand both sides or all sides, of the business enough, at least to be able to kind of fill the gaps, and that's what I really think is important. You had mentioned a resource or the benefit of using a larger firm. I see all of the quotes that come in, and I try to take a look at every quote that comes in, especially if I notice that it's from certain clients or things like that, and if I see, I'll take a peek at these documents just to see, hey, how do these things fit together, right? Are they missing something? Does something not match up? That way, hey, maybe the representative can reach out to the contractor or whoever's quoting that and just make sure that they're not making a mistake up front.
Right.
And that happens a lot internally. We have internal kind of safeguards for like our OneReach system and for MTP, MPO. When those types of things come in, we see a lot of that. I'll tell you, if a spec engineer is not involved, there's a pretty significant percentage of bills of materials that come in to get priced that don't match up. Whether it be polarity, whether it be the gender on the MTPs, whether it be the matching up of the actual performance level. So there's a lot of different things that get covered there when we can.
Hey there, business owners and tech enthusiasts. Are you tired of dealing with outdated technology and unreliable IT support? Introducing Better Days Technology, Rhode Island's premier IT solution provider. Whether you need secure network setups, top-notch cybersecurity, or seamless software integrations, Better Days Technology has got you covered. Don't let tech troubles hold you back. Visit betterdaystechnology.com or call 401-440-5483 today. One call to us and you'll be having better days. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
I see a great value there because when I used to be an estimator, we used to our office was we partnered with a large manufacturer. It wasn't Leviton, it was somebody else. And even though that we partnered with them a lot, I still wasn't so familiar with their product line that I could tell you, okay, well, if you're putting in these types of jacks, you have to use those kinds of faceplates and stuff like that. And that's where the value of having someone like a spec engineer being able to kind of look over that. If an estimator puts out a bid or sends a price to a distribution, can they request that a spec engineer look over it?
Well, all pricing, will come through the representatives, right? So they'll have an inside person. And yes, they can. And that happens. A lot of times it will come from the inside salesperson. They'll say, hey, can you look at this? They're looking for an alternative for this product, right? Or they're looking for, they want to see that, this is what they're trying to accomplish. Can you guys take a look at what they've come up with and let us know, if there's a better way to do it, right? So yes, that does happen.
You bring up a great point. See, it's funny because when guests are talking, my mind, not only is it thinking about the next question, it's also thinking about what you're saying. So if you see smoke coming out of my ears, it's because my brain's in overload. But you actually brought up something that one time that I used was we had gotten a bid. And it was a federal government job because at the time I was an estimator in D.C. And it was spec'd out a different manufacturer than we were aligned with. So you would think, oh, well, great, I can't bid that, right? Because they're spec'ing out, XYZ manufacturer, not ABC manufacturer. But in most of your government bids, especially the federal government bids, there's this term in there that says, or equivalent. Okay, great. But I'm not, I spec ABC manufacturer, not XYZ, so I don't know which parts XYZ directly correlate with manufacturer ABC because I'm having a hard time keeping up with my manufacturer, not the other four out there. Is that something they can rely on a spec engineer to do?
Yes. The unique part about using a spec engineer is we might be able to provide a different angle that might provide value add, right? So a lot of times when people do equals, distributors, I'm sure they have their own lists, right? And a lot of manufacturers will have a list. Oh, this jack equals this jack, right? And this cable equals this cable. But when you drill down to solution based, right, and you try to accommodate other things that are just more important than just the jack, and more important than just the cable, right? It's the whole entity. So, and it depends. It depends what kind of, when you mentioned small contractors, a lot of small contractors gain their success and start their businesses because they have relationships, right?
Yes.
And when you have a relationship, sometimes you can take things to another level. I mean, I always think that when I work with any of the end users that I work with, or it doesn't matter if it's a contractor, end user, whoever I'm working with, I always consider myself to be part of their team, right? I'm part of their business success. I'm part of the same team, right? So I'm trying to think from their perspective and do things according to how it's going to benefit them in the long run, but also the end user, right? And so there can be a lot of added value to full solutions that have contractor training programs and warranties, but beyond just the jack and the cable, hey, maybe they want it to be U.S. made. Maybe they're looking for solutions that are green, that have green initiatives or sustainability, right? Maybe they're looking to work with an organization that prioritizes, carbon neutral and green initiatives. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're looking for a solution that they can spread across beyond the United States, right? So a solution where, hey, I can have consistency. And you talked about it, Chuck. We're asked to do more and more, right, with fewer people, right, and less time. So a lot of these IT management group or facilities groups welcome a solution that can spread across the globe with really minor tweaks that are necessary when you go into the different regions.
Yep. So, if you listen to my podcast more than, 2 episodes, you've probably heard me say, our industry changes at the speed of light.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the absolute truth. I mean, just look at all the stuff coming down the pike that we got coming down, which means there's always evolving, new technologies, new standards and stuff like that. How can a spec engineer keep updated on all those advancements?
Yeah, so those are the people that are behind me and the rest of us. So we have a U.S. spec team and we have a global spec team. We're all part of the same team, first of all. So we interact with spec engineers that are out of Europe and other areas. But we also have, professionals that are on the TIA boards and they go to the different meetings and get downloaded on this information, right? And so what they do is they download us. So we meet with product management on a regular basis. We meet, the spec engineer team meets ourselves weekly at a minimum. We'll spend days sometimes studying and being taught, up-to-date technologies for things like AI data center and extended distance, 5G and wireless, in all the different technologies and all the latest standards. And we usually know what standards are going to be coming out right before most people. So that's what I really try to do is when I meet with my engineers, I try to educate them on what's coming up, because, it doesn't matter if you're a contractor or an engineer or a distributor or what entity you are. Our number one goal is to try to not make a mistake, right? We don't want to make a mistake.
I think that's every estimator's goal too.
Exactly. It's not to make a mistake. So I try to use that leverage, of the information that we're given and all the information that's spread throughout our team, to be able to give that incentive to maintain, a close, consistent communication with all the people that I support,
Right.
in my region and outside of my region, because I want them to be successful, right? It's very easy, when you think about it, when a design is put together, the pre-design, when we're starting to think about, okay, they're digging dirt and they're starting to decide what kind of technology they want to put in the building. By the time that technology gets in that building, I don't care if it's a K through 12 school, right? You're talking 18 months, sometimes multiple years, right? So, we need to understand what that migration path is, right? So, okay, is this technology going to be obsolete by the time the students come into their school, right? Or the people come into their building or into their data center? Are the pathways, is there a migration path to be able to accommodate the newer technologies? And, I've always believed, even when I was on the contractor side, that it's not always, it's not even usually, it's not always more expensive to plan for the future. It's just a different way of, you have to just think differently, right? You have to think
Yes.
in that format in order to allow it to happen.
You bring up a great point because as an estimator, I was always trying to adhere to the standards, which talks about future proofing and stuff like that. And you see this conversation light up social media all the time. You see people saying, "Well, why should I put in Cat 6A when Cat 6 is just fine? Nobody out there has 10 gig equipment." When you look at if you estimate a project, let's say putting in 100 cables, and they're Cat 6, and then you re-estimate that exact same project, putting in Cat 6A, it's not double the price. You're only really looking at the difference between the cost of the cable and the cost of the connectivity products, which I want to say it's been a while since I've estimated, but I seem to remember it being, 15% maybe 20% at the most. And it's a lot easier to pull cable during new construction as opposed to pulling cable 6 years down the road when you're in a call center and there's people, making calls trying to do sales and you're trying to open up ceiling tiles above people's head. Well, you know what? That labor is not going to be the same as it was on a new construction site. So future proofing is a really good thing. We were talking about accuracy as estimators, and when I was an estimator, whenever I get the phone call, you know what I'm talking about when I say the phone call, right? The phone call, hey, you want the job? The first thing that would go through my mind,
Yeah.
what'd I miss? Right. So accuracy is a huge priority especially because, again, a lot of people listening to the show are smaller companies where one small mistake could really bankrupt their company, right? So how can working with a large manufacturer improve the accuracy of those takeoffs and maybe even the labor estimates?
Yeah. Well, in general, it's the the contractor has the responsibility. The engineer or contractor, sometimes, specs come out with counts in them, right? But in the end, if you're counting triangles, right, that's the responsibility of the estimator. Now, when I was on the contractor side, I would usually, especially for larger projects, have things proofread. So hey, this guy went through all these drawings. Why don't we have someone else go through those drawings, right, and double check? But from the manufacturer standpoint, like I said, there's if you send a bill of materials in, there isn't much that we're going to do besides take a look and see if anything stands out, right? Because we get dozens of quotes a day, hundreds, right? Sometimes, everybody has their purpose. But if the request is asked for, and again, hey, can you take a look at this? What do you think about this solution based on this spec and these drawings? Well, that's definitely something that I've done for people, and if I were on that contractor side, I would want, the most knowledgeable person to be to
Right.
kind of look over and proofread what I've put together. You know, it usually doesn't take as long when somebody's done all the work. Now you're just making sure that it makes sense, right?
Let me ask you another question. Again, this is not one of our other regular questions, but I'm pretty sure you can answer this one too. A lot of the smaller companies, again, they might be a Big C installer F, installer C. They might be a Big C technician. They're starting their own company. At first, first year or two, they're rocking and rolling because they're doing, veterinary offices and small stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, they get their first opportunity for I don't want to say it doesn't have to be a big contract, but let's just say a big customer. And a lot of times they'll say something like, the prints have to be stamped by an RCDD, right? Are spec engineers RCDDs? That's the first question. And the follow up to that is that something that a spec engineer would do for a contractor?
So no, we would not do that for a contractor. So again, trying to separate, those pieces because, when something gets stamped by an RCDD, generally, it's part of that that contractor process, right? So we try to keep ourselves in between the engineers, the contractors, the distributors, end users, rather than too much on one, get too much involved, right? Because now it just well, first of all, that's not how we're set up, right? And that's not our role. But as far as spec engineers being RCDDs, yes. For the most part, a spec engineer is going to be an RCDD. If they're not an RCDD already, they're in training for one, and it's going to be an MBO. It's going to be a business objective for them to meet, within their first year. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I don't want to forget about the technicians, right? We talked about project managers and estimators, but the technician on the ground, they're the ones who encounter unforeseen challenges during the install, right? So can a technician utilize these same resources that we've been talking about?
Yes, I mean, as a matter of fact, there are times when I'll be talking to, the person to the person to the person, and I'll say, have the technician call me, right? I mean, it seems like nobody understands what the problem or what the solution is. So have the technician give me a call directly, and I might be able to answer them. And that's the same thing that we do with our customer service. So when you call into customer service, which has nothing to do with the spec engineers, but at Leviton, our customer service department, they want to talk to the people on the ground who are there, right? They want to get as much detail, especially if it's a concern or something where it seems like there's a Leviton solution or product that's not accommodating something, or it's not working, because there's two reasons. One reason, we want to know if there's an issue with our solution or our product, right? But on top of that, we have to be able to identify, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. So absolutely, I give my card out to technicians, and they're welcome to call me at any time. I always tell them that. I spent a lot of time being the last one in line to, if nobody could figure it out, I had to do that. So I have a lot of good experience with that.
A lot of people don't get that, Roy. I mean, a lot of people. Yeah. I don't want to say this because somebody's going to take this wrong, but a lot of people, especially, there's always this us versus them mentality. People in the field versus the people back in the office. But people tend to look down on technicians, right? For whatever reasons. It's wrong. I'm telling you right, it's wrong. But I'm going to tell you now, your technicians are your next project managers, your next estimators. So, you said yourself relationships, right? So you might be giving your cards out to technicians because you meet them at the Bixie conference or whatever, and so they see the value. Hey, if I keep in touch with this guy, he can help me with the design for whatever. But when that guy becomes a project manager or an estimator or maybe even not an office manager but an operations manager, invest in relationships, right? So last question.
Yep.
What are 3 questions that you think that a contractor should be asking a manufacturer, but they often overlook it?
Definitely the solution, right? The full solution. A lot of times, the questions we're asked are specific on just one entity. But you really should be asking your manufacturer, what's the full solution? And again, I can't speak for all the manufacturers or all the people, but if we're given the information that you're looking for to accomplish, is it cost? Is it technology? Whatever. I think the full solution, if you're talking about responding to a bid or creating a job, is one question. The other is what's the latest technology, right? What are people putting in out there, right? So I'm talking to, I'm in a pretty broad region, right? I go all the way I cover all of New England, all of upstate New York, and Pittsburgh, right? And I interact, and I'm involved with projects that are all over the country and sometimes all over the world. So being able to understand, hey, what technology is out there? What are people putting in? Are they putting in Wi-Fi 5? Are they putting in 6, Wi-Fi 6E? Which direction are they going in with technology? And the third question would be, how can I be more successful with, obtaining end users, right? Being the contractor for a large university or a large medical conglomerate, right? Or a large manufacturer, whatever it is. We spend a lot of time, again, that's the work that we do. And we align with our contractors, and we want them to be able to have success. Just like you mentioned the technician is the face, right? They're the ones
that's the person that the customer sees
they see them the most. So,
Yep.
And the same thing with the contractor, sometimes I'll see people get frustrated because they say, oh, well, we did all this and we're better this way, we're better that way. But it's like, well, if our contractors aren't talking to us about how they're going to be successful and acquire end users, well, then that doesn't help us either way. You know what I mean? So that one helps both people, right? Yep. And I think vice versa. If I know a contractor that's successful at a certain end user or client that I want to get involved with, I want to ask them, hey, how can I be successful here? You're successful here. How can I be successful here? And I think it goes both ways.
Yeah. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, Roy, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, well, you can go right onto our website, and I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always search me on LinkedIn, Roy Chamberlain. I'm an RCDD. I'm available on LinkedIn, and on our website. So depending on where you live, you can click on our website and go to the resources area, and you'll be able to get in touch with get the contact with a local spec engineer.
So if somebody's listening, like in California, you wouldn't be their spec engineer, but you could certainly put them in touch with their spec engineer, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So basically, you get connected with the representative or spec engineer, whatever is necessary to to get what you need accomplished, right? And we work as a team, so that's the whole thing. The representatives, we're definitely a very closely knit group.
Roy, I appreciate you coming on the show and helping preach the word, because I tell contractors all the time, Amazon's okay if you want to buy dog food, but if you want to buy connectivity products and cabling, you really need to go through distribution. You really need to partner with one of the larger manufacturers, because there's way more value there than just, can you get it back? One of the things I hear all the time is, we bought this cable off of Amazon. And then when I look at the box, it says CCA. Oops. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Spec Engineer will keep you from making that mistake. So, again,
just one thing on that. I don't know if you know, but there's also products that are labeled as certain manufacturers that are their copies.
Yeah.
and that's the kind of stuff you can run into there. But yeah, it's all about wanting to be successful and make your job easier. Just like you've said this whole time, Chuck, we are free resources, right? I mean, you and I mean, we're providing education and knowledge and feedback. We're interacting with hundreds of contractors and people in the industry. So reach out whenever we can help your job to be more successful or easier.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low voltage industry connects. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Got questions or ideas for the show? Chuck wants to hear from you. Stay connected, stay informed, and always aim for excellence. Until next time, keep those cables clean, your standards high, and your future bright. Let's talk cabling, empowering the industry one connection at a time.